Hi, this is Pastor Donna, and I am from Impact Church, and welcome to Impact Moment. So, my church is located in Aurora, South Dakota, and if you kind of know where the Brookings, South Dakota area is, we are about 10 miles southeast of Brookings. So, if you ever want to come and join us, we do have our Sunday services at 10 o'clock. So, with that, we are in today the Circle Maker, and we are continuing on with our book with chapter 3. And our author is Mark Batterson. So, we started a couple weeks ago with kind of learning who Honi is, and let's kind of do a quick recap. So, Honi was a Jewish philosopher, and he was really instrumental, and he was around the time of just about that first generation before Jesus, and he realized that his town needed something drastic to happen. So they were experiencing a lot of drought, and they did not have any idea of when it was going to rain next. It was affecting all of the crops. Their economy was dying because of this, and people were not surviving. And so he knew that he had to pray big. And one of the ways that he was able to do this is he literally went outside and he put himself and planted himself. But while he was standing, he began to pray to God for rain. And while he was doing this, he was actually kind of pivoting. They had explained it almost like if you had a math compass and you put the compass down and you try to do a circle with the compass. So he had basically one foot down, and then the other one he was just kind of swinging himself around. So he was making this circle, and really this is where we get the legend of Honi the Circle Maker, and how we can also pray big prayers like Honi did, and really utilizing the circle to help us do that. And today we are learning about the walls of Jericho within the Bible, with the walls coming down. And this is a really interesting place to really think, okay, yeah, this did happen in the Bible too. So here is what our author writes. So the first glimpse of Jericho was both awe-inspiring and frightening. While wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, the Israelites had never seen anything approximating the skyline of Jericho. The closer they got, the smaller they felt. They finally understood why the generation before them felt like grasshoppers and failed to enter the promised land because of fear. So the Israelites were told that within this area of Jericho, this was going to be their promised land and that they were to go to there. But when they go there, it's fortified with these huge, impenetrable walls. So, a 6-foot wide lower wall and a 50-foot high upper wall encircled the ancient metropolis. Huge. The mud brick walls were so thick and tall that the 12-acre city appeared to be an impregnable fortress. It seemed like God had promised something impossible, and his battle plan seemed nonsensical. God says, your entire army is to march around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, you are to march around the city 7 times. So every soldier in the army had to have wondered why. Why not use a battering ram? Why not scale those walls? Why not cut off the water supply or shoot flaming arrows over the walls? Instead, God told the Israelite army to silently circle the city. Interesting. And he promised, after they circled 13 times over 7 days, the wall would fall. And the first time around, the soldiers must have felt a little foolish. And I laugh when I read that because I'm like, how many times hasn't God inspired us to do something and we're like, are you sure? And sometimes we can feel a little foolish doing what God wants us to do. And we're like, but we do it anyway. But with each circle, their stride grew longer and stronger. with each circle, a holy confidence was building pressure inside their souls. By the seventh day, their faith was ready to pop. They arose before dawn and started circling at 6 o'clock in the morning. At 3 miles per hour, each mile-and-a-half march around the city took a half hour. By 9 o'clock, they began their final lap. In keeping with God's command, they hadn't said a word in 6 days. They just silently circled the promise. Then the priests sounded their horns and a simultaneous shout followed. 600,000 Israelites raised a holy roar that registered on the Richter scale, and the walls came tumbling down. After 7 days of circling Jericho, God delivered on a 400-year-old promise. He proved once again that his promises don't have expiration dates. And Jericho stands and falls as a testament to the simple truth. If you keep circling the promise, God will ultimately deliver on it. So this miracle is a microcosm. It not only reveals the way God performed this particular miracle, but it also establishes a pattern to follow. It challenges us to confidently circle the promises God has given to us. And it begs the question, what is your Jericho? For the Israelites, Jericho symbolized the fulfillment of a dream that originated with Abraham. It was the first step in claiming the promised land. It was the miracle they had been hoping for and waiting for their entire lives. So what is your Jericho? What promise are you praying around? What miracle are you marching around? What dream does your life revolve around? Drawing prayer circle starts with identifying your Jericho. You've got to define the promises God wants you to stake claim, the miracles God wants you to believe for, and the dreams God wants you to pursue. Then you need to keep circling until God gives you what he wants and what he wills. Remember, it's what he wants and what he wills. It's not always about us. And that's the goal. But here's the problem. Most of us don't get what we want simply because we don't know what we want. We've never circled any of God's promises. We've never written down a list of life's goals. We've never identified success for ourselves, and our dreams are as nebulous as cumulus clouds. Instead of drawing circles, we simply draw blanks. So more than 1,000 years after the Jericho miracle, another miracle happened in the exact same place. So Jesus is out of his way, out of Jericho, when 2 blind men hail him like a taxi. "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The disciples see it as a human interruption, but Jesus sees it as a divine appointment. So he stops and responds with a pointed question, "What do you want me to do for you?" Seriously? Is that question really necessary? Isn't it obvious what they want? They're blind. Yet Jesus forced them to define exactly what they wanted from him. Jesus made them verbalize their desire. He made them spell it out because it wasn't that Jesus didn't know what they wanted. He wanted to make sure that they knew what they wanted. And that is where drawing prayer circles begins, knowing what to circle. So, what if Jesus were to ask you this exact same question? What do you want me to do for you? Would you be able to spell out the promises, the miracles, and dreams that God has put in your heart? I'm afraid many of us would be completely dumbfounded. We have no idea what we want God to do for us, and the great irony, of course, is that if we can't answer the question, then we are as blind spiritually as these blind men were physically. So, this is super, super interesting. The author gives us some direction on really what to do here. And right now, we should be starting right here, right now, And he says, don't just read the Bible, but as you're reading the Bible, start circling the promises that you read. And don't just make a wish. Write down a list of God-glorifying life goals that you have for your own life, maybe even your children's lives. And don't just pray, but keep a prayer journal. Define your dream and claim your promise and spell out your miracle. So have anybody out there really kept a prayer journal? So I know that I have started one over the years and haven't really stuck with it, to be honest, with the prayer journal. But one of the things that I should get back to doing is actually keeping a journal. Get out my old journals and really kind of read back through those and see what I was praying about and just kind of seeing where God was playing and really fulfilling some of those desires and prayers that I had prayed for. And I bet I would probably surprise myself by actually having these prayers really be answered by God. And we have to keep in mind, though, too, that God doesn't always answer the prayers in the way that we want or in the timing that we want. And that's just how he works, because he is on his own timeline. He is not on our timeline. In fact, he knows best of when things should occur in our lives. So, and yes, that can be super frustrating. Been there. Very frustrated. But looking back, I can always say that it happened the way it was supposed to. Even if it was hard, even if it made me fall to my knees and cry, I knew that some things had to occur in order for something else to be fulfilled in my life. And really coming to that realization helps me be a better prayer. So I can make better circle prayers and figure out, okay, I can really trust God with my prayers, with my desires, with my goals. And he might not answer them right away, but I can know that he's at least heard my prayers and he knows what is going to be ultimately best on how to fulfill those in really unexpected ways. And one of the things that we get to really go back through and figure out, which having a prayer journal, I think I'm going to go ahead and start one up again, because it really says to define your dream, claim your promise, and spell it out. And the more that you verbalize it or write it out, the more that you're going to be able to process what you really want. So, and he gives us some really, really good prompting questions to start this prayer journal. So, have you really sat down and made even a 5-year goal for your life? Can it be paying off a credit card, getting into a better living situation, whether it be getting a new house or a more affordable apartment maybe? Is it getting a better paying job? Is it getting to know your family more on an intimate level and reconnecting with family? So there's a lot of things that we could really be praying about. And I have to say that with the life goals, sometimes it's really hard to kind of envision what your life could look like. I think we all have an idea of what we want, but sometimes it can feel like we're just surviving currently. And so it's super, super hard to have hope for the future when you are just in survival mode. So, but it's still important to at least think about what your future should look like or what you want it to bring to you. And what does that look like? Who's in your future? What are you doing in your future? So, write these things down in this prayer journal. And it doesn't have to be a nice paragraph, and it doesn't have to be in a good type of format. It can be just scribbled mess of notes, like the way I write a scribbled mess of notes. So, and here's some other really, really good questions that he asks us in this book. He says, what promise are you praying around? What miracle are you marching around? And what dream does your life revolve around? And I think those are going to be three main questions that are going to help us really kick off our journaling for our prayer journal. So I'm excited to really get in there and start doing that. And even just taking the 5 minutes just to sit and to figure out where you want your life to go and invite God to help you reach that goal. And to know, though, too, that everything is on God's timing. It is not on us. And sometimes when He fulfills our answers, they don't always look exactly like what we had asked for, but in hindsight, it normally is in a roundabout way. So keep that in mind. Allow some flexibility in what God gives you. So I am super excited to see how the rest of this book plays out. But with chapter 3, he really says too, like, get outside of your walls, get outside of what you think is really going on. Because so many of us think that God is still not for us, but God is for us. And once you really, truly sit with that God is for us, it really changes your whole perspective on everything that is going around you. So it changes your perspective and your feeling of your own life and your own life goals. And how do you bring this message that you are learning to also to your friends and family? Because this is great that we are experiencing the amazing information that this book has, but it's only going to serve us only if we don't share it with others. So I encourage you to invite others to really do this book with you. Read it with you. There's some really good questions throughout the chapters. And this would be a great question to ask your spouse, ask your significant other as you read this. And say, hey, I'm reading this book, came across a few questions, and I was wondering, what would your answers be? I think you're going to be surprised, and it's going to be a bonding experience. And you can even ask your children, no matter what their ages are. I mean, really, how many of us had goals when we were kids? I think it was actually easier for us to set goals when we were kids, because life hadn't grabbed us and thrown us to the ground as much as kids usually. So, but ask your kids, what are their goals? I think you're going to be surprised. And even if they are older adults, they still have goals. Ask them, and ask them how they are praying and if they are praying, and kind of explain to them what the Circle Maker book is all about. So I'm going to leave that with you today, this week, to really ponder over and get those journals out, even if it's just a scratch pad of paper. So it doesn't have to be a fancy, expensive journal. It can be anything that you can write on. And if it helps, really, when you are praying, literally draw a circle as you are praying. And really doing that and staring at it and thinking about what you're praying, it helps you center yourself to focus on only that. It's almost like a meditation when you do it. And it takes practice. But eventually you can block out the noises that are going around you, especially if you have kids running around or if you have the TV on. Sometimes you don't even remember that stuff is there. When you are so into focusing and drawing a circle and praying for what God has inspired you to pray for. So we will go into chapter 4 next week, but please pick up this book if you haven't already. You can buy it anywhere that books are sold, and this is a pretty quick read and pretty inexpensive, but it is a treasure trove of info, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. So have a blessed rest of your week. Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, go ahead and click the like button. And also, think about subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos. We also have a Facebook page where we post upcoming events for our church, Impact Church, And speaking of the church, we stream our services live to Facebook and YouTube every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So be sure to turn in for that. And if you missed the live stream, you can always watch them later right here on YouTube. And once again, thank you and have a great day.